What's going to happen on Election Day? Will it be a big headache? Let's discuss this and more with our CNN political contributor, the Democratic strategist, James Carville, and Republican consultant, Alex Castellanos. They're both part of the best political team on television, goes without saying. You used to live in Virginia until a few months ago.
Exactly.
How worried are you that this huge voter turnout, especially in the D.C. suburbs in Northern Virginia, could pose some significant problems?
I think it's possible. I mean, you have the system is going to be stressed. There's going to be a big turnout. I think people are just going to have to resign themselves to the fact they're going to have to wait a long time in line, or they're going to have to adjust their behavior and show up really early in the morning.
It's a great problem to have. I wish Republicans had it. But this year, the intensity is on the Democratic side. It's a problem for Obama because he's trying to get new voters to the polls, young voters, black voters, a lot of turnout that hasn't shown up before. Sometimes those enthusiastic voters, they lose their enthusiasm when they wait in line.
And the organizational structure might not be ready to handle a huge turnout like that.
My guess is that they're going to have people out encouraging people to stay in line. They'll have like donuts for them or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a whole program.
Donuts are delicious.
And they could show up Wednesday or Thursday. That'll still be... No, I'm just kidding.
All right, stand by. I want to talk a little bit about what John King was reporting earlier, our chief national correspondent. Look at the electoral map, because he's hearing, and they're not saying this publicly, that the McCain campaign may be getting ready to give up on Colorado, New Mexico, and Iowa, even though they're not saying so publicly, so they can focus more of their energy on some of these other states, including Pennsylvania, which the Democrats have carried in recent presidential elections. All right, James, you're one of the best strategists out there. Forget about the fact that you want Obama to be elected, but is this a smart strategy to sort of put all your eggs in that Pennsylvania basket?
Well, they got to do something. And as you know, as I said on the second debate, that I basically think this election is pretty much over. But McCain is going to try right to the end, and as he well should. And conventional strategy is not going to do for him. So they're going to have to pull out some of these states that are not doing that well in the Rocky Mountain West. And they're going to go to some of these old industrial states and think that they have a better time. I don't blame him.
He needs Florida, he needs Virginia, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania. But Pennsylvania is so intriguing because in most of the polls there, he's down by 8, 10, 12, maybe even 14 points.
Things are tough all over. We can't narrow this thing down, so we're just defending Arizona. McCain's problem is not a state-by-state problem now, though. It's a national problem. He's got to lift the water level up in more than one state. So pulling out of a few states to concentrate on a national effort is probably a better strategy for him.
Yeah, and remember, just a huge money disparity. So since Obama's just able to go anywhere that he wants, he can move. It just takes resources are sort of meaningless to him in a sense.
Because he raised $150 million in September alone.
And that's the challenge, really. Obama can concentrate on a few states and say, unless you beat me here, you can't win. And McCain has to change it everywhere.
Obama's going to come into Georgia big, I think.
What do you mean? You think he's going to win Georgia?
I think he's going to spend a lot of money in Georgia coming down the stretch, and it's going to make McCain defend it.
I hope so. Better there for the Republicans.
Well, he's going to be everywhere.
Carolina.
But yeah, he's obviously going to be North Carolina, Virginia with everything he's got. But I expect a lot of heat. Because
if he does really well in Georgia, that could be problems for the incumbent Republican Senator Saxby Chambliss, who's running for re-election.
Well, that's in a lot of states. You have that situation now. States where McCain needs to do well to help Republican senators. Coleman in Minnesota, North Carolina, Liddy Dole. So McCain's got to fight hard in there. He's not the only Republican on the ticket.
And Colorado, both of the Utahs are running well. He pulls out. That's going to demoralize. I mean, look, Republicans don't have a lot to be encouraged about right now. I'm not saying that because I'm a Democrat.
And you alluded to the enthusiasm factor. Let me show you some numbers. In our new CNN Opinion Research Corporation poll, we asked voters, registered voters, are you extremely enthusiastic about voting this year? For the Democrats, it's now 45% say they're extremely enthusiastic compared to 30% back in August. Among Republicans, it basically stayed the same. Only 24% now say they're extremely enthusiastic about voting this year. It was 22% back in August. You're a trained professional when it comes to these matters. That's a big number.
That's a big number, but there's another way to look at this. This election's always been about the Democrats. It's always been about Obama. And James has said this before. You know, when you're looking for change, you're looking for the guy who's not the Republican this year. So there's intensity for the Democrats, but there's also great intensity against them. If you were to ask that same question, how excited are you about voting against the Democrats this year, you'd get a pretty big number from Republicans.
But not big enough, you think?
Well, I think that the Republicans have this argument. If you vote for Barack Obama, you'd have a blank check in Washington for taxing, spending. How enthused are you about that at this critical time?
They've only started making that argument in the last few days.
Well, it's an argument, and I don't. It's an argument to be made, but basically basically it's the argument you make when you're out of all other arguments. Is, oh, yes, they're going to win, but before you let them win by too much, you ought to think about this. It's not a bad argument, but it's just it's the residue of what you have when nothing else works for you.
It also happens to be a true one that's concerning them. Americans love divided government, and a car with 2 accelerators and no brake pedal when we're on the edge of an economic precipice, it's a dangerous thing right now.
All right, stand by, guys, because we're going to continue this conversation. We're calling it the Tina Fey effect. A lot of people are calling it that as well.